Hello, my name is Paul FELSCH, and I'm the Director of Testing, Research, and Evaluation for Leon County Schools. This year, the FCAT will be administered during the month of April, while the end-of-course assessments are scheduled to follow the FCAT into the month of May. Students taking geometry, biology, and algebra 1 will be taking an end-of-course assessment. The district would like to share important procedures to assure that all students are administered the FCAT and the end-of-course assessments in the proper standardized manner. This video should be viewed by all test administrators and proctors associated with these tests. In general, all Florida public school students, including those attending virtual schools, must be administered the FCAT for the appropriate grade level and the appropriate end-of-course assessments. There are a limited number of ESE students whose educational plan indicate they should take the Florida Alternate Assessment, or ELL students who should be taking the CELLA instead of the FCAT reading. Let's talk about what is new for 2012. This year, there will be no math or science FCATs administered at the high school level. The FCAT reading, math, and science will be administered later this year. As you can see on the calendar, this year's FCAT begins on Monday, April 16th, and runs through Friday, April 27th. Note, at the high school level, the FCAT retakes are administered April 9th through the 20th. Computer-based retakes may be administered throughout the entire window, while paper-made tests must be administered during the week of April 9th through the 13th. The daily session schedule and some of the session lengths differ from previous years. The session and times have been distributed to your school test coordinator and can be found on the front cover of your test administration manual. Test administrators are required to maintain an accurate seating chart for each group of testing students. Grade 6 and grade 10 reading, as well as reading and mathematics retakes, are computer-based only, except for ESE students with the appropriate accommodation. The policies and procedures for these tests are found in the FCAT Computer-Based Test Administration Manual, which your school test coordinator has distributed to the appropriate personnel. Each secondary school must schedule computer-based tests so there are sufficient computers for all students to complete the FCAT within the administration window. Science reference sheets are not provided for grade 5 or grade 8 students, but grade 8 students will receive a periodic table of elements. FCAT 2.0 rulers are provided for use only in session 4 for grades 3 and 4 mathematics. The end-of-course assessments that will be administered this year are in geometry, biology, and algebra 1. This year, students are required to read and sign a student pledge having to do with giving or receiving unauthorized help during the test. All persons involved in administering the FCAT or handling the FCAT materials must carefully read the FCAT Administration and Security Agreement, which has been revised to emphasize the importance of proper training and possible consequences of test administration irregularities. In addition, all test administrators must sign a Test Administrator Prohibited Activities Agreement indicating they understand prohibited activities. The Test Administrator Certification Number must be recorded on this form. These documents should be signed and forwarded to the school test coordinator. All test administrators must be certified educators. Non-certified personnel may serve as proctors. Okay, the FCAT schedule varies by grade, but all Leon County schools should begin administration of the appropriate FCAT on the same day. The daily FCAT schedule should be adhered throughout each school. Computer-based tests, including those end-of-course assessments, must be administered within the appropriate windows. Test administrators must follow the exact amount of time allocated for each FCAT. That amount of time can be found in the handout your school test coordinator received from the district. A session may not be ended early, even if students indicate they have finished. When a break is provided in the schedule, it is only a stand and stretch break, with no interaction between students. During the break, students' answer sheets should be inserted into test booklets, which must be closed. If students need to use a restroom during the test, only one student of each gender can be allowed at a time. Those students do not receive additional makeup time to complete the test session. Although there are times indicated for end-of-course assessments, students may have additional time if they need it. All test administrators should review the 2012 FCAT Test Administration Manual for the appropriate subject and grades. The days of the test are very busy, some may say a little hectic. That is no time to be seeing the directions for the first time. If you are a test administrator of ESE or ELL students, please make sure you're aware of the proper tested accommodations for each student. These accommodations can be found in the student's IEP or LEP plan. All allowable accommodations must be offered to the students, but no additional accommodations may be given. and it is important that students must have experience with the accommodations during his or her normal classroom activities. Here's a special note about computer-based testing. If a student has a paper and pencil accommodation for that test, this should be based on the fact that the student does not use or seldom uses a computer during normal classroom activities. Let's talk about the test site. They should be free of distractions, have comfortable seating, sufficient workspace, and good lighting and ventilation. Students should not be facing each other when at a table, and they should not be able to easily view other students' answers. Students should be seated at least 3 feet apart. If there's any concern, physical barriers should be placed between students. Use of physical barriers may be of particular importance during the administration of the computer-based test. Prior to the test, administrators should remove all visual aids displayed in the room. Let's discuss test administrative activities during the FCAT. The most important things to remember during the FCAT and the end-of-course assessment is to first, read the appropriate script verbatim. Second, to provide adequate proctoring of each exam. The latter factor is most important for successful and fair administration of these tests. This is best accomplished by circulating throughout the room during the test to make sure that proper testing procedures are being followed. Additionally, page 31 of the administration manual states that it is not appropriate for test administrators to use phones, grade papers, or work on the computer during tests. You may encourage students to continue working, and it is allowable to remind the class to make sure they are in the right section of the test and the item on the answer sheet. This should not be interpreted as pointing out to a specific student that he or she is answering the wrong question on the answer sheet. The test administrator cannot give advice nor give any interpretation regarding specific items on the test. If a student does ask a question about the FCAT or the end-of-course assessment beyond general directions regarding taking the test or about a specific item, the test administrator is allowed only to give general encouragement, such as do the best that you can. If a student insists that an item is incorrect or has no correct or 2 correct answers, the test administrator should inform the school test coordinator so this may be noted on the comment form. You may assure the student that if there is actually an error, the item will not be counted in the results. This brings us to an often asked question. What kind of responses are teachers allowed to give a student if he or she asks about a specific FCAT item? Page 16 of the FCAT administration manual describes test security policies and procedures. One of the prohibited activities is reading the passages or test items before, during, or after the test. Therefore, except for specific accommodations for certain ESE students or ELL students, no teacher or school administrator is allowed to read any FCAT or EOC item. During the test, make sure that the students clear their desks except for appropriate test materials. Students should have only a number 2 pencil. The students may not use any books, notes, or scratch paper, and they may not talk or make any disturbance as he or she works independently. The test materials allowed by grade can be found in the administrator manual. For certain grades, students do have access to calculators, reference sheets, and folders for the computer-based testing. Test books may not be returned to students after they have been collected. Test items are not to be discussed with students even after the test has been collected and materials have been returned. Any missing materials or test irregularities must be communicated with the school test coordinator as soon as possible. A test irregularity is a departure from the standardized testing procedures outlined by the FCAT or end-of-course test administration manual. For example, allotting too little time or too much time to take a test, or administering a section out of order. Now we're going to go over test invalidation. The purpose of any test invalidation is to identify when the validity of a test has been compromised. The decision regarding invalidation is made only after a discussion with the district director of testing. A test must be invalidated under any of the following circumstances. First, a student has an electronic device during the testing, or second, a student is caught cheating during the testing. A test may be invalidated under the following circumstances. A student becomes ill and is unable to finish the test. A student is allowed an incorrect amount of time. A student is not given the proper accommodation. A student is disruptive during the test. A student is working in the wrong session. Or an error occurs in the test administration that would compromise the validity of the test. The Florida Department of Education and Leon County Schools have a very strict policy concerning possession of electronic devices during any FCAT or end-of-course assessment. Page 9 of the FCAT administration manual states, students may not have any electronic or recording devices in their desks, in their pockets, or anywhere they can reach them during the testing, even if the devices are turned off or the student does not use them. If a student is found to be in the possession of any electronic device during the test, his or her test must be invalidated in order to successfully enforce this policy. By during the test, we mean any time after an FCAT or end-of-course assessment book has been distributed to the student. This includes any break within the testing session. If an electronic device is within a student's possession during the test session, but this factor was not discovered until after the session has ended, this is still cause for test invalidation. An electronic device is defined as any that can receive, transmit, record, and/or calculate, except for the approved four-function calculator. The best way for a school to avoid students having electronic devices in their possession is to collect them prior to the test and put them in the front of the classroom, and to adequately proctor the entire test. It would be best to practice these procedures during the official FCAT and end-of-course practice sessions. It is to set a consistent example for our students. It would be best if test administrators do not use electronic devices during the testing sessions. In regard to security, inappropriate action by school or district personnel before, during, or after an FCAT or EOC administration may result in consequences such as test invalidations or loss of teaching certification. I'm going to talk about a new company that the state of Florida has contracted. The company is called Cavion. This company is charged with the task of analyzing student results to identify extremely unusual behavior with the potential of an unfair advantage in taking a test. There are three types of unusual behavior they will be identifying. First, a very high similarity of answers amongst pairs of students or groups of students. If a student's tests are identified or flagged, the state will take the following action. First of all, the state feels that the possible causes of extremely high similarity responses are answer copying, test coaching, proxy test taking, and/or collusion. Therefore, when student responses are identified as having a very high similarity of answers, by this they mean a 1 in a trillion chance that the matches of similar answers occurred randomly, the student's results will be withheld awaiting investigation by the district. This investigation should include all test administrators and students involved. No student level scores will be withheld based on either erasure analysis or gains analysis. However, a school being flagged will lead to a district review. This could mean that a school's grade will be withheld awaiting that review. To conclude with some common testing problems, please make sure that all test administrators read verbatim the correct and complete script for administering the test found in the administration manual. For FCAT reading and math and science, by grade and subject scripts are found between pages 33 and 235. The script for the computer-based FCAT, as well as the end-of-course assessments, can be found in a separate administration manual. The best way to avoid mistakes is to review the manuals prior to the test date. Perhaps the most common mistake during assessment has been for a student to inappropriately go from one test session to another. They do this by ignoring the stop sign visible at the bottom of the pages. Good proctoring will help avoid this, but if a student still does so, the school test coordinator should contact the Office of Testing, Research, and Evaluation. Calculators can only be used for FCAT, math, and science at grades 7 through 12. If it is used by students at any other grade levels, it is reason for invalidation. Lastly, the security of all test materials must be maintained before, during, and after test administrations. If any secure test materials cannot be accounted for after initial search, please inform your school test coordinator as soon as possible. This is the essential information Leon County Schools wants to share with all FCAT test administrators. Other important information is shared during your school's official FCAT and end-of-course training. All persons involved with administering the FCAT or the end-of-course assessment must sign the security agreement indicating they have viewed this video. Have a good day and good luck during the FCAT and end-of-course assessments.